I am super excited to invite up my friend.
The goal is to be right more than you're wrong.
Well, I suppose it is. Since you're wearing the shirt, I don't know how we don't start with
And what's going on with Twitter?
Twitter. Nothing, right? Nothing.
Maybe not. Actually, that might be the problem.
I call it an ownership crisis. Yeah. What's going to happen? What's your read on the situation, and what's your prognosis as to how it concludes?
I don't know. A week ago I thought it was definitely going to happen. Now I'm worried there's going to be a lawsuit to force it to try to close. As someone mentioned earlier, it feels like we're sort of heading towards a very... Look, Elon clearly wants a lower price. There's no easy way to get there.
Yep.
I don't know. It's just chaos. And I think the challenge is imagine you're an advertiser and you wake up in the morning and you saw the potential buyer of the company saying 90% of the traffic is fake, which isn't obviously true, but
right.
Just imagine what that does to the underlying business.
Well,
like trying to run the business day to day. And what if the deal does fall apart? How does Twitter just proceed? It feels honestly like complete chaos.
Well, there's the substance of it, which is there is a contract and corporate lawyers and there's terms and there's
signatures on deals.
Exactly.
That are not easy to get out of.
And there's financing lined up. So there's that part of it, but then there's the poop emojis and the whole discourse on Twitter about Twitter seems to be a grave violation of accepted corporate governance.
Terry, you do this all the time, but there's also these things called NDAs.
Right.
Which don't seem to apply to one person.
Right. Well,
so I don't know.
But is there a consequence?
Is there any? I mean, I don't think there's any. There's nothing in corporate M&A history that looks like this.
No.
This is unique.
Right.
I have no idea.
Kind of taking a page out of Trump, right? In the sense that he's sort of just being a wild man.
Look, between SpaceX and Tesla, he's got a tremendous amount of wealth. It feels like if he wants this to close, it will close. This whole spam thing, I don't know. I mean, it all sort of feels like it feels like buyer's remorse. It really does.
I mean, if I was a Tesla shareholder, I think I'd be not only upset about his variance of attention, because this is taking up a lot of time, obviously.
And it's going to take up a lot of time, right? This is not just a lot of time right now. This is...
But it's also impacted the stock price.
Well, look, and now you see Twitter making moves and replacing executives, because I think Twitter is also worried, what if this doesn't happen? They need to be prepared for the alternative, which is moving forward. So I honestly answer your question. I literally will sit here and say, I have no idea whether it's going to close.
Right.
I think it's impossible to know. Unless you're inside of Elon's brain, there's no way to know right now.
Give me a grade for the Twitter board. What kind of a grade do they get for
They get an A for, 5420?
Oh, in hindsight, they get an A.
5420 in this environment?
But
where would Twitter be without this transaction right now?
Okay.
Substantially lower.
Okay, so that's a contrarian view.
They have a signed deal.
Right.
At 5420, when Facebook's trading at 200, Snapchat's at 23, the board gets an A+.
A+.
For looking out for shareholders. There's no way they were getting 5420 today without that. I think that's amazing.
I get it. Who do you think should own Twitter?
Look, I've always thought there's two companies, the two most logical companies that should own Twitter. One is Google, right? Google has a complete control over information and search. The one thing it's missing is real-time information. So there was always a thought of Google and Twitter is the perfect combination. And then the other one that has always made sense to me was the Walt Disney Company, because you look at sort of news, entertainment, and sports, especially sports, and it always struck me that sort of Twitter in so many ways is sort of the future of sports talk, sports information. If you think about what SportsCenter used to be, that's what Twitter banter is now.
Yep.
There always seems to be so much logic for putting those two together. And if you think about ABC News, if you think about ESPN, there seemed to be so much that you could do with that platform, which Disney looked at. Obviously, Iger didn't move forward, but
don't see it.
But remember, the two of the three companies that looked at buying it years ago were Disney and Google.
Yep. All right, let's move on, because I want to do some rapid fire on a number of topics. Fate of digital publishers: BuzzFeed, Vice, Vox. Dotdash.
Attention got bought for $100 million today. I didn't see that coming.
Oh, really?
ATTN got bought for $100 million, or around $100 million today.
Okay.
But look, I think that's, if you look at sort of what's happening with these businesses, the problem is none of them matter, right? Like if we were to get a group, if we had a panel up here of high school students from across the country, BuzzFeed means nothing to them. Vice means nothing to them. Like that's the problem, is that these publishers are not brands. Disney obviously means something. I don't think this is a brand. Netflix means something.
Second bullish thing you've said about Disney so far. This is truly a different Rich Greenfield. Let's talk about the trend of sort of celebrity influencer as marketer. Do you get excited about any of the platforms like Cameo, Triller, any of those sort of plays, or is it just all TikTok?
Look, I think the entire, I think the whole idea of that people can be their own, they can build their own businesses on the internet now, whether it's Cameo, I mean, Triller doesn't really seem like a business to me, but leave that aside. The concept of building your own business on the internet as a creator, I think the creator economy is here to stay. And I think I mean, look at the success of Charlie D'Amelio as an example. I mean, she didn't exist to this room 4 years ago, and she's got TV shows and sponsorship deals with Dunkin' Donuts. I mean, the ability to monetize your celebrity or your fandom is incredible. And I think just beginning, and I think it's empowering lots of other people to recognize that you can do this, maybe not to that scale, but there's a tremendous ability to build businesses away from the walled gardens of media and to offer brands and advertisers a way to connect, and I think in a much more authentic way than jamming ads on TV on a 10-foot experience, but actually having a relationship with a consumer.
And those are largely on the platforms,
I think
YouTube.
Well, I think they begin on those platforms. I think that's where you build your.
Right, and then you can.
You have to fish where the fish are, right? Like you have to fish on
Where
these
the audience is,
platforms. But then you leverage that into many other ways of building that relationship. I mean, look at selling merch, right? I mean, that's something you obviously need the fandom to sell the merch, but once you have that, there's lots of ways to
revenue
build.
channels.
Correct.
Yep. TikTok, are they going to run into government problems?
Doesn't look like
on
it.
This administration or a
well, I mean, I guess it depends on what you think. Who's the next administration? I guess that's sort of, we didn't really talk about that, but look, TikTok feels like, TikTok's a massive disruptor to this entire space, right? Because
new format.
Well, no, but it's not just that. Charlie Ergen made a great comment last week because he was the first person to really sound the alarm bell about Netflix eating into traditional television. That was probably 7 or 8 years ago.
Yep.
Last week he said, and it's just obvious when you look at what people are doing, he goes, people are watching 2 hours of TikTok today, not Discovery Channel. Right. And you think about that, and it's not just teenagers watching TikTok.
It's a substitution of
It's everybody. It's just time. And so TikTok is just, if anyone uses TikTok, it's just fun. And you don't have to go figure out who to follow. You don't need friends. You just need to click on or swipe. And all of a sudden, it's just magical, and it's this incredible experience. The advertising is great. It actually feels authentic to the platform. It's not just repurposed from other platforms. And remember, TikTok started at Musical.ly, right? And it was like 15-second videos, and then it was 30 seconds and a minute, and then it's 3 minutes, and now it's 10 minutes. And you know, I don't think we're that far away. I mean, you're seeing a lot of pitches right now during New Front Week, right? TikTok TV are going to be real. I mean, just like, remember, I think with this whole audience, I think we often forget, I think we mentioned this at one of your digital media summits and what dinners you had recently, Future of TV dinner, that the second largest connected TV time spent source is YouTube. And people forget how powerful and how big YouTube is on the big screen. Right. And now TikTok is gunning for that big screen. And I think that's very, very
TikTok on the big screen.
TikTok on the big screen. I think that's going to be a big theme of the next 2 years. Just watch.
Are we going to turn our TVs in the living room?
Don't know. We'll see.
Okay. Let's talk about. Let's get to the elephant in the room. Netflix. How did everyone, you included, get it wrong? Like in hindsight, 6 weeks or 4 weeks after the big debacle, what happened there? Benefit of hindsight.
I think the biggest single factor. There's two, I think, big factors. One is clearly connected TV sales are slowing globally. Part of that is a pull forward of demand. Part of that is supply chain. But there's no doubt that all of these services, because it's not just Netflix that's under pressure. I mean, you're right. I mean, literally right as we're speaking now, Disney's doing an upfront presentation where Bob Chapek was on stage, and the initial pitch was there's now advertising on Disney Plus. Right? So it's not just...
And HBO.
And the reason they're doing that is not because they, quote unquote, want to.
Right.
They're doing that because they need to grow subscribers and things are slowing sooner than they expected. And so they are looking for ways to accelerate. So this is not just a Netflix, this is an industry issue.
Right.
Why are subscribers slowing?
Well, do you attribute that to pricing, competition, lack of content? What's the rationale underlying this slowdown in subscription growth?
I think it is, if you were to combine, let's just do the numbers real quick, rapid fire. Peacock's going to lose $2.5 billion this year. Paramount Plus is going to lose $2 billion, right? These numbers are massive, right? Disney lost almost $1 billion last quarter on streaming.
Yep.
So the sheer volume of losses in streaming, the amount of money being spent to chase subscribers uneconomically,
Right.
I think is the single biggest issue,
Right.
combined with the fact that Netflix's content hasn't been as good lately.
Right.
And so I think when your content doesn't break out in the way that it did before, and there's a lot more competition that's uneconomic, and again, you can be uneconomic for a while, right? Like, these are huge companies that can overspend. They all jumped into streaming.
Right.
And I'll say something not nice about Disney in a way that, like, this is mostly Bob Iger's fault, right? Like, he was so successful with Disney Plus so quickly.
Yeah.
All of these companies who were never going to do direct to consumer jumped in and said, oh my God, it's so easy, right? Like, you do it direct to consumer, you get subscribers, your stock goes up. Now you're realizing, oh my God, this is actually not so great. You actually have to generate profits. Profits matter. And all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, we're bleeding. And you can't just unwind it because you've bet your whole future on streaming. Like, that is the whole future of all these companies. I mean, if you watch the NBC upfront yesterday, it's all about Peacock, right? It's not about NBC.
Oh, no, it's
about
an
Peacock.
existential bet, which justifies the big dollars because it's effectively a replacement for the existing business model.
So I think the thing that wasn't planned for was how many companies would make sort of uneconomic decisions to chase Netflix's and Disney's valuation.
Right.
And I think that was the greatest mistake that we made, was not recognizing how much that uneconomic spending was going to pressure growth.
Okay, we're going to go into the lightning round now. Disney Plus did way better than you thought, not as well as you thought, at 220 million subscribers?
Disney Plus has 137 million subscribers, and roughly 50 million of them are in Asia at 75 cents. So it is much. Look, it's done incredibly well.
Yep.
I think it is slowing, which is why they're moving to advertising now, is to re-accelerate growth. The real problem with Disney Plus is it needs to be broader. It can be broader. I don't think any consumer in this room cares whether Disney Plus has just kids content or family content, or has everything.
Is that why you're advocating a sale of Hulu to Comcast?
Yes, there's no reason. They don't need to. Everything on Hulu.
Flanker brand is useless.
Only murderers in the room, only murderers could certainly be on Disney Plus. It doesn't need to be on Hulu. Disney can do everything with their brand.
All right, let's keep going with the lightning round. Discovery, Warner Brothers Discovery, I guess is the new name.
Warner Bros.
Warner Bros. That's right. What one piece of advice would you offer David Zaslav?
HBO and HBO Max is a mess, right? The branding, like we need to get to
unify the brand,
or a different brand from like this is just it's utterly confusing to consumers. Having HBO that's only on the TV, and HBO Max that only lives digitally.
Right.
Look, you and I know the difference because this is what we do for a living. I don't think consumers understand that Flight Attendant's on HBO Max and Succession is on HBO. That is just, I think it is a lot to ask a consumer to figure out the difference.
Two more things. Gaming. What platforms excite you the most? The gaming front.
You look, it's hard not to be excited about the creativity on Roblox. I mean, when you look at sort of, think about what YouTube is, the UGC aspect of anybody can build anything. That's what you're seeing on Roblox. And it's still super early. But I think you saw consumers love this. Obviously, there's pressure, the kind of the other side of the pandemic. I mean, a lot of companies, Netflix, Roblox, you're seeing the other side of the pandemic effect. Like Live Nation's benefiting from that now, obviously, but there's certainly pressure on that. But if you see the underlying creativity and how every brand, I mean, I don't think there's an advertiser in the room that isn't trying to figure out their strategy for Roblox. I mean, when we talk metaverse, I mean, we say meta what is, to me, putting on goggles is not the future. I heard your comments earlier today. We share that vision. I don't think the world is a goggles world, but I do think the metaverse, sort of when you look at what Snapchat's doing, when you look at what Roblox is doing, I think those are real tangible examples of where the metaverse is headed and how brands can play a big role in it.
prospect of advertising in the gaming/metaverse world?
Harder to understand exactly what role that plays. I mean, obviously, you know, you're seeing brands create experiences, whether it's Nike or Vans, and I'm still skeptical of how much people, they're great marketing stunts.
Right.
You can launch a movie and create a movie experience. I think the greater opportunity for brands is to figure out how they unbundle their content or how they unbundle what they create. How do we put their content, how does the NFL put their content and allow consumers to build with it? How does Warner Brothers figure out how people build in Roblox with pieces of Batman or pieces of DC Comics versus creating, it's easy to create a DC Comics experience or a Batman experience.
Right.
But it'll be a lot more powerful if consumers can take that IP and create with it. And I think that's where we're probably headed in terms of how do you unbundle content, how do we unbundle music and allow consumers to build and create. Yes, it's scary because you're sort of losing control over the experience and what it looks like. But I think that's the role for brands ultimately, is how they unbundle and actually participate in the creative process.
Didn't sound a lot like advertising.
It sounds a lot like, you know, interspersing your content, almost like product placement.
Yeah, yeah.
It's almost more like product placement in a sense. It's not controlled product placement, but it essentially is product placement.
Final question. I want something of value for the audience to take away. What is you think is the
This
most
wasn't valuable? I mean, that's really harsh. I mean, that was a hard way to end.
Tangible.
I mean, that was really brutal.
Oh boy, that was bad.
That was really tough. I'm
sorry.
not coming back next year for
Something
sure.
tangible that they can act on immediately. What do you think is the most undervalued public stock in your coverage area?
I mean, it's crazy. The one stock that sort of jumps out at me, and it was touched on earlier in the day here in one of the panels, is Spotify. I mean, if you think about it.
Crushed.
Well, just think about it. It's been crushed. Daniel is aggressively investing in the future.
Yep.
Realizes that advertising now is a huge opportunity to expand the market. His biggest competitor in the space is Apple, that doesn't believe in advertising. Amazon's focused elsewhere. Apple's focused on video. Amazon's focused on video. They could care less about audio and music. Daniel's investing aggressively, is the only player in the space, literally is trying to own all things audio, build an advertising and subscription business, and the stock is 30% below where it went public. There is no more exciting story.
And
that
65% off from its all-time.
And he's being crushed for investing. Like literally, this is not crushed because he made a mistake like Netflix. This is being crushed because he's telling the market, I don't care what you think about right now. I'm looking out 10 years and I'm going to win. And he's a founder that is still there. I think you bet on Daniel.
There you go. So on top of the incredibly valuable insights throughout the conversation, you can also buy Spotify. Rich Greenfield, thank you very much.
I didn't know where you were going, but that was good.